Right now, the crypto market is watching one major thing very closely, and that is regulation clarity in the United States, especially for XRP. The CEO of Ripple, Brad Garlinghouse, has once again stepped forward and confirmed something very important about the future of crypto rules, and this is directly connected to what is known as the Clarity Act. This bill is not just another regulation, it could decide how cryptocurrencies like XRP are treated in the biggest financial market in the world. Recently, at a major XRP event in Las Vegas, Garlinghouse clearly said that he still believes this bill will pass very soon, possibly before the end of May, even after multiple delays. Now here is where things get serious, because this is not just about timing, this is about opportunity. According to him, the delay is not a failure, instead it is a sign that negotiations are reaching a final stage where decisions are actually made. He explained that when frustration in politics reaches its peak, that is when agreements happen, and according to his view, the system is now at that exact point. At the same time, there is also pressure building, because if this bill does not pass within a very small time window, experts are saying that the next chance may not come until 2030. That means everything right now is happening in a very critical moment for XRP holders, institutions, and the entire crypto industry. So what does all of this actually mean for XRP, and why is the CEO speaking so confidently right now? The answer is simple, because this is one of the biggest turning points for XRP since the SEC case. For years, XRP has been fighting uncertainty, confusion, and mixed signals from regulators, but now for the first time, there is a real chance that clear rules could finally be written into law. This is exactly why Ripple is pushing so hard behind the scenes, along with more than 100 major companies supporting this bill. The goal is not just to help XRP, but to create a system where crypto can grow without fear of sudden legal action. And when the CEO himself comes out and says that things are about to move fast, the market listens very carefully. What if I told you that one decision in Washington could completely change the future of XRP? And that decision might happen within days, not months. What if this is the moment where XRP finally moves from uncertainty into full legal clarity, opening the door for banks, institutions, and global adoption at a level we have never seen before? And what if the delay everyone is worried about is actually the final signal that something big is about to happen? Because according to Ripple's CEO, this is not the end of the story. This is the moment just before everything changes. Welcome back to XRP On Moon, your go-to place for the latest XRP news, deep analysis, and real insights that actually matter for your future. If you want to stay ahead in the crypto market and understand what's really happening behind the headlines, you are in the right place. Right now, the entire XRP community is focused on one key question. Is clarity finally coming, or is this just another delay that leads to nothing? But when we look closely at what Brad Garlinghouse is saying, the message is very clear and very strategic. He is not just making random predictions, he is reading the political environment and signaling that things are moving toward a final outcome. The Clarity Act is not a small bill, it is a complete framework that could define which cryptocurrencies are securities and which are not. And this has been the biggest problem for XRP in the past. Without clear rules, companies hesitate, banks stay away, and institutions do not fully commit. But once clarity comes, everything changes because risk is reduced and confidence increases. This is why the timing is so important. According to recent updates, the Senate has a very limited window to review and pass this bill before the Memorial Day break, and if it misses that window, the entire process could be delayed for years. That means the next few weeks are not just important, they are critical. And here is where things get even more interesting. Even though the bill has missed previous deadlines, support for it has actually increased. More companies are backing it, more political figures are talking about it, and more pressure is building to get it done. This is not what failure looks like. This is what momentum looks like right before a decision is made. At the same time, we also need to understand why Ripple is so confident. Over the past few years, the company has been fighting for clarity, not just for itself, but for the entire crypto industry. From legal battles to global expansion, everything they have done has been leading to this moment where regulation finally catches up with innovation. And when the CEO says that XRP is the North Star of the company, it shows that everything Ripple is building is centered around making XRP a core part of the global financial system. This is not just about price, this is about long-term positioning. So when you combine all of this together, the CEO speaking confidently, the bill gaining support, the timeline getting tighter, and the industry pushing harder than ever, it starts to look less like uncertainty and more like preparation for something big. But at the same time, we cannot ignore the risk. If the bill does not pass in time, the opportunity could disappear for years, and that would slow down adoption in a major way. That is why this moment is so important, because it is not just about potential upside, it is about a make or break situation for XRP in the United States. It becomes very important to understand that what we are seeing right now is not just normal political delay, this is actually how major financial laws are finalized, especially when the stakes are extremely high. When Brad Garlinghouse talks about frustration reaching its peak, he is pointing toward a very real pattern in government decision-making where intense disagreement often comes right before a final agreement is made. This is why his confidence is not random, it is based on experience and close observation of how these processes work behind the scenes. Right now, the Clarity Act is sitting at the center of a power struggle between different regulatory bodies, mainly the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission and lawmakers who want to create a more innovation-friendly environment for crypto. For years, the SEC has taken a very aggressive stance, especially toward Ripple and XRP, claiming that many digital assets fall under securities laws, while others in the industry argue that this approach is outdated and harmful to growth. This is exactly why this bill matters so much, because it could clearly define who has authority over crypto and how assets like XRP should be treated. If XRP is officially recognized outside of the strict securities framework, it would remove one of the biggest barriers that has been holding it back for years. This is not just a legal win, this is a gateway to massive institutional confidence. Now think about it from the perspective of big financial players. Banks, hedge funds, and payment companies do not avoid XRP because they do not see potential, they avoid it because of uncertainty. No major institution wants to invest billions into something that could suddenly face legal restrictions. But the moment clear rules are in place, that hesitation starts to disappear, and this is where things can accelerate very quickly. At the same time, Ripple has not been sitting still, waiting for the US to decide. The company has already expanded globally, building partnerships in regions where crypto regulations are more clear and supportive. This is a very important detail because it shows that XRP is not dependent on one country. But if the United States finally provides clarity, it could act as a massive multiplier for everything Ripple has already built. And here is where the strategy becomes even more interesting. While many people are focused only on the price of XRP, Ripple is focused on infrastructure, payments, and long-term adoption. The company is positioning XRP as a bridge asset for cross-border transactions, something that could move money faster and cheaper than traditional systems. But again, for this vision to fully unlock in the US, regulation clarity is essential. Another key point that cannot be ignored is the level of support this bill is receiving from the industry. Over 100 companies backing the Clarity Act is not a small number. It shows that this is not just Ripple fighting for its own benefit, this is the entire crypto sector pushing for a clear and fair system. When so many major players align on one issue, it increases the pressure on lawmakers to act. However, despite all this momentum, there is still uncertainty in timing, and this is where many investors get confused. Some people see the delay and think that nothing is happening, but in reality, delays at this stage often mean that final details are being negotiated. Lawmakers want to make sure that once this bill passes, it is strong, balanced, and difficult to challenge in the future. And this brings us back to the urgency of the situation. The window before the Memorial Day break is extremely important because if the Senate does not move within this time frame, the entire process could slow down significantly. This is why every statement from Ripple, every update from lawmakers, and every shift in tone matters right now. At the same time, the market is starting to react not just to facts, but to expectations. When the CEO of a major company like Ripple speaks with confidence, it creates a psychological effect. Investors start to prepare for a positive outcome, institutions start to reassess risk, and the overall sentiment begins to shift. This is how markets move even before the actual event happens. But it is also important to stay realistic. Confidence does not guarantee success, and until the bill is officially passed, there will always be risk. This is why smart investors watch both sides, the potential upside if clarity is achieved, and the possible downside if delays continue. So right now, XRP is sitting at a very unique position where multiple forces are coming together at the same time. Political pressure, industry support, global expansion, and strong leadership from Ripple are all aligning around one key moment. And when multiple factors align like this, it usually leads to a major shift one way or another. The question is no longer whether clarity is important. Everyone already agrees on that. The real question now is timing, because if this happens soon, it could trigger a completely new phase for XRP, but if it does not, it could extend uncertainty for years. And this is exactly why the next developments are going to be so critical, because we are not just watching a bill move through government, we are watching a potential turning point for XRP's future in the global financial system. One thing is becoming very clear, and that is the fact that XRP is no longer just reacting to news. It is now positioned at the center of a much bigger transformation that is happening across the entire financial system. What we are seeing right now is not just about one bill or one company, it is about how digital assets will be integrated into the global economy, and XRP is directly involved in that conversation. When Brad Garlinghouse speaks with confidence about regulatory clarity, he is not only talking about solving a legal issue, he is pointing toward a future where XRP can operate without limitations in major markets like the United States. And if that happens, the impact will not be small or slow. It could be immediate and very powerful because the groundwork has already been built over the past few years. To understand this properly, you need to look at how markets behave when uncertainty is removed. For a long time, XRP has been in a unique position where its technology is widely recognized, its use case is clear, but its legal status in the US has created hesitation. This hesitation has acted like a barrier, preventing full-scale adoption by institutions that would otherwise be very interested. Now imagine what happens when that barrier is suddenly removed. The first reaction is usually a surge in confidence, not just from retail investors, but from large financial entities that have been waiting on the sidelines. These are the players who move significant amounts of capital, and when they enter a market, they do not do it quietly. Their involvement changes liquidity, price stability, and long-term growth potential. At the same time, we also have to consider the role of the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission in this entire situation. For years, the SEC's stance has created a level of unpredictability that has affected not just XRP, but the entire crypto industry. Many projects have faced similar challenges, but XRP became one of the most visible examples because of its direct legal battle. If the Clarity Act successfully defines the boundaries of regulatory authority, it would reduce the power of aggressive enforcement actions and replace them with clear guidelines. This shift from enforcement to clarity is exactly what the industry has been asking for, and it is why this moment is so important. It is not just about ending a conflict. It is about starting a new phase where rules are known in advance. Another important factor to understand is how Ripple has positioned itself globally during this period of uncertainty. While the U.S. has been slow to provide clear rules, Ripple has expanded into regions where regulation is more supportive, building partnerships and strengthening its network. This means that XRP is already active in real-world use cases, especially in cross-border payments. So when U.S. clarity eventually arrives, XRP will not be starting from zero, it will be accelerating from an already strong foundation. This is a very powerful position to be in because it allows for rapid scaling instead of slow development. Many projects need time to build infrastructure after regulatory approval, but XRP already has that infrastructure in place. At the same time, we are also seeing a shift in how governments view digital assets. Instead of ignoring or resisting them, there is now a growing recognition that crypto is here to stay. Lawmakers are starting to understand that clear regulation is not just about control, it is about competitiveness. If the U.S. does not provide a supportive environment, innovation and investment will continue to move to other countries. This creates additional pressure to act quickly because no major economy wants to fall behind in a financial revolution. And this is exactly where XRP fits into the bigger picture. It represents a bridge between traditional finance and modern digital systems, something that could play a key role in the future of money movement. However, even with all this potential, timing remains the biggest question. The market is highly sensitive right now, reacting to every update, every statement, and every delay. This creates a situation where expectations can build very quickly, sometimes faster than reality. That is why it is important to stay focused on actual developments, rather than just speculation. Another key detail that many people overlook is the psychological aspect of the market. When leaders like Brad Garlinghouse speak with strong confidence, it does not just provide information, it influences perception. Investors start to believe that a positive outcome is more likely, and this belief can drive behavior even before any official decision is made. But at the same time, experienced investors understand that nothing is confirmed until it is officially passed. This balance between optimism and caution is very important, especially in a moment like this where the stakes are so high. So as we move forward, XRP is sitting at a crossroads where multiple outcomes are possible, but all of them depend on one key factor, and that is regulatory clarity. If it arrives soon, it could unlock a completely new phase of growth and adoption, but if it is delayed again, it could extend uncertainty and slow down progress. The situation around XRP is starting to feel more intense, and that is because everything is now entering a phase where outcomes will soon become reality instead of speculation. Up to this point, the market has been driven by expectations, predictions, and statements from key figures, but very soon it will be driven by actual results. And when that shift happens, it usually brings strong reactions in both price and sentiment. When Brad Garlinghouse continues to show confidence in the process, it is not just about keeping the community hopeful, it is also a signal that Ripple is actively involved in discussions happening behind closed doors. Large companies like Ripple do not operate in isolation. They communicate with regulators, lawmakers, and financial institutions regularly, and this gives them insight that the average investor simply does not have access to. This is why his words carry weight, especially at a time when uncertainty is still present. However, it is also important to understand that even with inside knowledge, no one can guarantee the exact timing or final outcome of a bill like the Clarity Act. Political processes are complex, and many factors can influence the final decision, including negotiations, amendments, and competing interests. Right now, one of the biggest factors influencing this situation is the growing competition between global financial markets. Countries around the world are racing to become leaders in crypto innovation, and this puts pressure on the United States to act quickly. If clear regulations are not introduced soon, businesses and capital may continue to move to regions that offer better clarity and support. This is not just a theory, it is already happening. Ripple itself has expanded heavily outside the US, forming partnerships and building infrastructure in places where regulations are more defined. This shows that the company is prepared for multiple scenarios, whether the US moves quickly or continues to delay. But at the same time, there is no doubt that US clarity would act as a massive boost for XRP adoption. Another important point to consider is how the role of the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission could change after the Clarity Act. For years, the SEC has been one of the most powerful forces shaping the crypto market in the U.S., often through enforcement actions rather than clear guidelines. This approach has created fear and uncertainty, especially for projects like XRP that have been directly targeted. If the Clarity Act successfully defines the responsibilities of different regulatory bodies, it could reduce the SEC's ability to take aggressive action without clear rules. This would create a more balanced system where companies know what is allowed and what is not before they operate. For XRP, this would remove one of the biggest risks that has been hanging over it for years. At the same time, we also need to look at how institutions are preparing for this moment. Large financial players do not wait until everything is confirmed to start planning. They analyze trends, monitor developments, and position themselves early so they can act quickly when the opportunity arrives. This means that even before the bill is passed, there may already be behind-the-scenes preparations happening that could lead to rapid movement once clarity is achieved. This is why some analysts believe that the biggest moves in XRP may not happen after the news becomes public, but right around the time when confirmation is expected. Markets often move based on anticipation, and by the time everyone knows the outcome, a large part of the move may have already happened. This is something that experienced investors always keep in mind. However, there is also another side to this situation that cannot be ignored, and that is the possibility of disappointment. If the bill faces another delay or fails to pass within the expected time frame, the market could react negatively, at least in the short term. Expectations are currently high, and when expectations are not met, it often leads to sharp reactions. This does not necessarily mean that the long-term outlook would be damaged, but it could create temporary uncertainty and slow down momentum. That is why this moment is so important, because it carries both high potential and high risk at the same time. Another key factor is how the XRP community is responding. Right now, there is a mix of excitement and caution. Some people believe that this is the moment they have been waiting for, while others are more careful, watching for confirmation before making any major decisions. This balance in sentiment is actually healthy because it shows that the market is thinking critically rather than reacting blindly. So when we look at the full picture, it becomes clear that XRP is standing right at the edge of a major turning point. The next steps taken by lawmakers, regulators, and Ripple itself will determine which direction things move in. Whether it leads to a breakthrough or another delay, one thing is certain: the impact will be significant. Everything comes down to one simple but powerful idea, and that is confirmation. Up until now, the XRP market has been moving based on signals, expectations, and confidence from leaders like Brad Garlinghouse, but very soon, there will be no more guessing, only results. And when confirmation finally arrives, whether positive or negative, the reaction is expected to be strong, fast, and impossible to ignore. At this stage, it is important to clearly understand what a successful outcome would actually look like for XRP. If the Clarity Act passes within the expected time frame, it would create a defined legal framework for cryptocurrencies in the United States. This means that assets like XRP could finally operate without the constant fear of sudden regulatory action, something that has held back growth for years. In such a scenario, the impact would likely go far beyond just price movement. First, institutional confidence would increase significantly, as large financial players would finally have a clear set of rules to follow. Second, adoption could accelerate, especially in areas like cross-border payments where XRP already has a strong use case. And third, the overall perception of XRP would shift from being a risky asset to a regulated opportunity. At the same time, the role of the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission would also become more defined, reducing uncertainty not just for XRP, but for the entire crypto market. This kind of clarity is exactly what the industry has been waiting for, and if it arrives, it could open the door to a completely new phase of growth. However, we must also be realistic and consider the alternative. If the bill does not pass within the expected window, or if it faces further delays, the market could react with disappointment. Expectations are already high, and when expectations are not met, it often leads to short-term volatility. This could slow down momentum and create uncertainty once again, at least for a period of time. But here is something very important that many people overlook. Even if there is a delay, the overall direction is still moving toward clarity. The level of discussion, the amount of industry support, and the growing pressure on lawmakers all suggest that regulation is not a question of if, but when. So while timing matters a lot, the long-term trend still appears to be positive. This is why experienced investors do not focus only on one outcome. They prepare for multiple scenarios. They understand the potential upside if clarity is achieved quickly, but they also remain cautious in case of delays. This balanced approach is what allows them to navigate high-risk, high-reward situations like the one XRP is currently in. Another key factor to keep in mind is that XRP is not standing still while all of this is happening. Ripple continues to build, expand, and strengthen its position globally. This means that regardless of short-term outcomes in the US, the foundation for long-term growth is still being developed. And when regulatory clarity eventually aligns with this foundation, the result could be very powerful. So when we put everything together, the message becomes clear. XRP is at a critical turning point where the next decision could either accelerate its path forward or delay it temporarily. But in both cases, the importance of this moment cannot be ignored because it represents a major step in the evolution of not just XRP, but the entire crypto industry. Now the focus shifts completely to what happens next. The coming days and weeks will be crucial, and every update will matter. This is the time to stay informed, stay alert, and understand that we are watching a key moment in crypto history unfold in real time. So if you found this breakdown helpful and you want to stay updated with the latest XRP news, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss any important updates. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think XRP clarity is finally coming, or will there be another delay? This content is for informational and educational purposes only and should not be considered financial advice. Always do your own research before making any investment decisions because the crypto market is highly volatile and risky. Never invest more than you can afford to lose.